A Tuesday morning press conference at the leader of the opposition office addressed the SLP administration's, quote, poor performance, unquote, inadequately addressing crime and violence in St. Lucia. Opposition Senator Dominic Fede insists that recent comments made by Prime Minister Philip J Pierre on the issue of crime on the island are cause for concern.
The comment by the Prime Minister, Honorable Philip J Pierre, that the sky is not falling is seen as very unfortunate by the United Workers' Party. When I saw this headline, my heart actually sank, because what I was hoping is that there would have been an appreciation for all of the tears that we have seen on television by mothers, by brothers, by sisters, and by loved ones who continue to lose young men in our country at a spiraling and unprecedented rate. Now, what I would like to say is that blaming the police is another issue that we have seen consistent in the narrative coming out from the government in its responses publicly pertaining to the crime situation. And so we would like to call on the Prime Minister to better articulate a holistic plan for the fighting of crime in St. Lucia.
Fede insists that despite the police being held accountable as the agency responsible for law enforcement, it does not take away the government's obligation as policymakers to give the police the requisite support and necessary leadership. Leader of the opposition AllenChastanet reveals that even when in office, the United Workers' Party always insisted that addressing the issue of crime and violent behavior had to be a multi-pronged approach. He urges the government to tackle the issue of crime at its core, as opposed to placing all emphasis on enforcement.
When I came in, I said that we were going to tackle crime. And we realized that to tackle crime, you needed a holistic approach. Okay? The police and the intervention of police is the last resort. So the reality is, if you want to prevent crime from taking place, you have to stop it from taking place. We quickly understood that the majority of crime was being committed by young persons, and particularly gang-related. And in order to combat that early enough, you had to take on the attitude that we had to know that we as a society that we're competing against the gangs. We have to give young people a more compelling reason not to join a gang.
Chastanet maintains that focusing on the challenges impacting youth will significantly impact gang-related activity. He encourages the government to strengthen various sporting disciplines, technical and vocational subject areas, and access to finance for the young entrepreneur. The opposition leader reveals that his administration was keen on addressing St. Lucia's stifling conviction rate while in office.
We had a very poor conviction rate. So the lab, the video cameras around the place, and the court system is what we were also addressing to try to resolve that issue. That people need to know if they committed crime, that the conviction would be swift and it would be harsh. And then in addition to that, we started the parole system so that people knew that people could be reformed. But more importantly, we wanted to create a halfway house where young persons who committed crimes for the first time, that they didn't go to jail and didn't have that stigma, but they would lose privileges in society, and that while they were serving that time, that they were building skill sets. So you put them in a position that they knew that it was a better way forward. And the last one really starts becoming from society. Society has to develop an intolerance to it. This idea of, well, he's a Malawi, and I'm going to protect him, and it's not his fault, and blah, 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 that has to stop.
The opposition says they sympathize with those who have lost their loved ones to crime and violence, gun-related or otherwise. However, the opposition also remains insistent that the current administration must have a clear plan to adequately address crime in the country for St. Lucians to once again feel safe walking the streets. For the DBS News World, I am Jason Darius.